entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar and Robin Pabello, only on LA Talk Radio.
Thank you for joining us. This is Female Filmmakers Fuse. I'm your host, Alexa Polar, and I'm missing my co-host. You're missing our guest is here. Half our guest is here. Yes. So before we get started, let me go ahead and give you that phone number to call in if you have any questions, want to bug our guest or whatnot. It's 818-602-4929. Again, that's 818-602-4929. We had a contest. It's called the Elevator Pitch Contest, where we had a lot of short scripts sent to us, and then we picked the top six. Top six came in, literally pitch their short script in a moving elevator. So they had 50 seconds, less than that, to pitch that. We filmed it. We sent it out to public voting. Then the top three came back to a more formal setting pitch with an actual producer. Rachel Ann Mullins sat in as a producer, and they pitched to her. Then we put that out for public voting, and today we have the actual winner. The winner, the short script is going to actually get produced. So we're going to go ahead and start pre-production on that. And our special guest is Nick. How do you say your middle name? Afka. Yeah. Oh wait, your thing's not on. That's my fault. Let's try that again.
Okay, how about this?
There we go. There you are.
Yeah, so Afka.
Afka.
A-F-K-A.
Okay.
Like Kafka, the writer, but without the K.
Gotcha. So Nick Afka Thomas.
That's right. Yeah.
Lovely name. We are
Tomasi.
Kind of like sassy Tomasi.
It is. It's very much. It rhymes with
love
sassy.
It. Love it. And Sarah is not here because she suffers the same ailment as I do.
That's right.
So I can totally relate, and I feel for her. She's recovering or still in the middle of a migraine.
That's right. In the throes of brain pain.
Yeah, that's the worst. If anyone has them, they understand what that's about. I have the envelope here of the winning short script. The writer, I think this person's gonna direct it. I'm not sure. It's sealed. They tallied it, gave it to me. I'm gonna give it to you.
Oh wow!
Is that cool? So
this
that
is very exciting.
So you can go ahead and read who the winning filmmaker is and which short script is gonna get produced.
This is very cool. I have to say that idea of doing the literal elevator pitch is absolutely magnificent. I love this. Also, I'm feeling that what I need to do is that thing where there's an enormous pause between when I say that who before I say who the winner is. Although that clearly isn't going to work very well on radio, is it?
Right.
Just masses of dead air.
Like, what's going on?
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to open the. There's the sound of the opening envelope, and then, and the winner of the 2019 elevator pitch contest is Liz Marshall. Congratulations! Absolutely magnificent, Liz Marshall. You are fantastic at pitching, and your idea is magnificent and needs to be made and will be made.
There you go. Thank you, Nixie. Thank you. That was perfect.
I'm so excited.
I think you need to come back and do that every time we have some sort of contest.
Yeah, I should be that sort of announcer in the background.
You should come during our film festival and do that. And the winner is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Be my entire life's career.
So it was, as you can see the numbers, they were pretty close.
It was close.
So Liz Marshall with the wide eyes, that was really close.
It's actually, it's a good contest.
Yeah, it is. That's insane how close that was.
Yeah.
So congratulations to the three, and Liz will be contacting you so we can get started on this. And let's move on to the podcast.
So I'm actually impressed as well. The election turnout is almost higher than it is in a national one.
There you go. Right. There's no electoral college for that. This is all real public voting. We do the real thing here. So Nick, thank you for joining us today. It is a pleasure. Actually, and I have to say, speaking of Sarah, my other half, who is the other half not only in my life but of We're Tomasi,
she actually saved my life yesterday. So the fact that I'm here is also down to Sarah. So today there's going to be a lot of talk about Sarah.
I was going to say that I saw that she posted that, and that must have been scary for both. And like, I think I commented and I told her like to remain calm during such a situation is key. And she did that, and she's your other half, and she saved the other half, which is
she did. Otherwise, it would just be we are Massey. And no, obviously the Tomasi comes from Thomas from me and Massey from her, and we realized that when our names overlap that much, we had to put them together.
Right.
So it is important that we stay together.
Right.
Otherwise, it really doesn't work. Because we were Tomasi.
Right.
We're no longer Tomasi. Yeah, actually, it's funny because afterwards we were both having a conversation, and we both felt that we had been extremely calm in the situation. I think she thought that I was less calm in the situation than I thought I was, but yeah, it was. She could see very quickly that there was something going on, and then I started actually going over to her and backing up. And so she was coming towards me as I was just backing into her.
So you're back.
So I was
like beep,
yeah,
beep,
exactly.
without the noise, like
without the noise. That's right. It's like even in my last moments, I'm cracking jokes. Like, beep, I'm like a truck. Yeah, it was very strange because I had for the first time in my life. I've choked several times, obviously. I think as everyone probably has, but for the first time in my life, I actually had the moment where, as I was trying to go for a second breath, there was no breath to be had. It was not. There was actually some sort of actual blockage, and I realized that there was something stopping me from breathing. So that was the moment where I went, oh, okay, this is serious.
That's scary.
Yeah, and unfortunately Sarah was there, and fortunately Sarah is incredibly level-headed in a crisis.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, exactly. So if you are if you haven't been in a crisis, I recommend that you get Sarah to come around because she's
Right.
extraordinarily level-headed.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I'm not so much.
No.
I don't think I am. Let's see. My dad recently cut the tip of his pinky. He's missing literally a portion of the tip of his pinky, and I heard my mom screaming for help, so I went in the room and she's like, go get your dad a Band-Aid. I was like, I didn't see what was happening. She's like, there's a lot of blood. And I was like, all right. So I walked away and I'm looking for a Band-Aid. I couldn't find one. I called my sister-in-law. She, basically I finally was able to get a Band-Aid. My brother was there as well. And we were both telling my dad, okay, let me look at your finger. Let's put this Band-Aid on there. I was like, make sure your hands are dry so I can put this on there. When I saw it, I was just like, I can't do it. I was freaking out. I threw the Band-Aid at my brother. I was like, you handle this. And my dad's looking at me like, calm down.
I hear you. I am so squeamish. I mean, even just hearing that story makes me
I have
squirm.
pictures.
Oh, do you?
I do.
Don't show them to me.
I have pictures.
Don't show them to me. I'm the kind of, I love, for example, all those shows, the medical dramas and things like that. I love the drama aspect of it, and I love the way they figure out what's
but not
wrong.
the real ones.
I can't watch the bit where they take you to surgery and they do that. So I can only ever watch about 3/4 of any particular show. I'm so squeamish.
No,
it's ridiculous.
There's a lot of people in my family that are in the medical field.
Really?
And they bring the stories home, or they're totally fine. They'll be eating, discussing, and I'm like, okay, I can't. There goes my meal.
God, that's
like,
terrible.
I can't do it. I'm the same. I definitely, that's not something for me. And recently, I have to say, and I have to admit, I've been getting better because my mom has been going through a lot of medical stuff, health issues, and I've been helping her out. And a lot of things I didn't think I had the stomach to do, I've been able to. So obviously for the people that you love, you can push through it.
There is a thing, isn't there? You sort of step up in the scenario. I mean, it's exactly what happened yesterday. You know that Sarah obviously had every right to panic in that situation, but she doesn't because she sort of steps up to it in the situation. And I like to think that I stepped up to it as well in the situation and went, okay, I need to do something.
Well, you back that thing up.
And I backed this booty up. It's like, not now, Nick, not now. So I like to think that, although Sarah told me that there was panic in my eyes, so I like to think that my brain wasn't panicking, even if my eyes were.
A portion of you was thinking.
Clearly there's some
the brain
thought
was,
going on. Yeah. So anyway, here I am today.
That's good.
Just as well.
No, and I'm glad that you're okay.
I would have ruined your show, wouldn't it?
I would have been more concerned, honestly, so I wouldn't care about the show.
That's encouraging.
But it's kind of like, oh, well, Thanks
Oh,
a lot, Nick.
Yeah, we lost a guest, very literally.
Great.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I follow your shows. You guys have a sketch comedy,
Yes, that's right.
and I follow it on Facebook.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Sometimes I stay up. It's crazy the times that you guys do the whole watch. Is that for
Yes.
people in different time zones?
It's
Or is it just because you guys are rough?
It's because we're off. We're a strange bunch of people. We definitely have that thing. Yesterday, for example, we had a good 90-second conversation about whether it was Saturday or Sunday. And I know there are ways to tell these things exceptionally quickly, but
Right.
we were really trying to figure it out without having to resort to phones.
Right.
And the fact that it's the weekend, but the weekend is like a regular day, but a regular day is a bit like our lives are so
It's different for people in this
haphazard.
field.
Yeah, it really is.
There's
isn't
no
it?
such thing as
It's
weekends.
so strange. Well, there was one time about a year and a half ago, I think. In fact, it came up in our news feed as a memory on Facebook, which tells you how big a moment it was for us. There was a moment early last year, where we were sitting and we were watching TV. It happened to be a Saturday, and we were just watching TV, and we decided that we weren't going to do any of our jobs that entire day. So we end up watching TV for the whole day, and we're thinking, this is so luxurious. This is so naughty and so ridiculous. How does anyone get to be allowed to do this? And the next day we couldn't face the jobs that we had to do. And we were like, could we just do what we did yesterday? Could we just like hang out, eat food, and just
Right.
not do anything particularly, but watch some TV, binge a bit? And we did that again, and we were so this is ridiculous. Who's ever heard of such thing? And then we went, wait, this is a weekend. This is literally taking a Saturday and a Sunday off and having a weekend. That is
Right.
the definition of what we just did.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And the fact that stood out as being sensational news to us.
That it came back. Do you remember?
Yeah, exactly. Do you remember that time? And that's the truth. We hadn't had a single Saturday Sunday combo like that since then.
That's
So it
crazy.
was,
Wow.
yeah, that is a memory.
Keeping
is
busy
genuine.
though. That's
Yeah.
amazing. You guys do the sketch comedy live as well.
Yes, that's right. In fact, we have a show coming up this Thursday on June 6th, 9 p.m. Second City Hollywood. There we go. That's a blatant plug, isn't it? But
plug.
it is a monthly show at Second City Hollywood.
Okay.
And then we do shows from time to time down at in Encinitas, for example, or in New York if we're visiting. We were at the festival in Toronto in March. So we're doing shows outside of our regular monthly slot, but we have this monthly slot every Thursday. Start of every
Now, for anyone that isn't aware, and I highly recommend you go follow We Are Tomasi on Facebook, because that's mainly where you guys show the videos. And
yeah, we put them up on Facebook and on YouTube, but
Okay.
Facebook has to be said is where we're most active.
more, yeah. And so you have to follow, because the way the comedy, the sketches are, they're super relevant and clever.
Thank
you. It's a rarity, because usually when you have sketch comedy that I've seen lately or recently, it's not even, I mean, it's funny, but it's kind of like, all right, like it's literally for shits and giggles, and it's kind of like, all right, thanks, like I learned nothing, you know. Like, thanks for taking up the time and making me laugh, but let's move on now. But with yours, what you and Sarah do, it's very clever. I enjoy it because it's kind of like you're pushing education down people's throat without them realizing it, because the way you guys are doing it is super it's well done.
Oh, thank you.
Know, and I know that sounds weird to say, like you're pushing it down their throat, but there's some people that are super anti whatever it is that you guys are showcasing for that sketch.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
I know
Without
exactly
giving
what
it
you mean.
away.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh wait, I think I'm learning something. You know,
Wait, what is this?
Wait, what's going on? Why are you making me think? You know, and entertaining me at the same time. That's why I love it, and that's why it's okay when you guys do your watch. You know, watch now on Facebook, and it's 3 a.m. and I'm like, okay, no.
Why are you doing this? It's funny, that thing you were saying about when we're doing it is it reminds me of when we were in we were visiting the UK, and our time zones are off anyway,
right?
And then we're coming with an American time zone in our bodies, living in the UK to visit my parents, and there was one time my dad just said, just get on the same time zone, which has become a catchphrase for us ever since, is that we just we're not living life at the speed
I
and the
think-
time that you should be.
I think you both are on your own time zone.
Yeah, there's GMT, there's PST, there's EST, and then there's WAT.
That's what
There
it
we go.
is. I honestly think that's what it is. 'Cause there's times where I'm like, wait, what? Okay, sure. You know?
And actually, it is weird because I mean, my other job, my sort of day job, as it were, is tutoring, and I do all my tutoring online. So I'm
Okay.
teaching people in the UK and in Australia.
So
or,
you're
you know,
really all messed
and
up.
I really am all messed up. So like last night, for example, I finished teaching someone in the UK at 3:30 a.m. You know, but then
Yeah.
I was also teaching someone in Switzerland this morning at 9:15 a.m. our
Oh,
time. So
wow.
it's their night time and the other person's morning time. But for me, it's just some sort of random in the middle of what should have been sleeping time. You know?
Wow. Yeah, that's. Do you get any sleep at all? Is this
I-
probably why you're choking so much? It's just like
Yeah, it's the
your
habit. It's
body's
not
just
just
like,
one
okay,
time,
time to just rest right now. It's just like, wake up. Is that what's happening here?
It might actually. Now you're making me think. You're making me think. What's that about?
I'm so sorry.
I know our sleep pattern is a little bit crazy, but I think Sarah says it's a good practice for when we have children, so that we're already ahead of the curve.
you
We'll sleep whenever.
And then you're gonna get one of those kids that are just so good that they
Oh,
sleep.
wouldn't
in
that
the
be
night.
ironic? Wouldn't that be the irony of all
I have
irony?
I have 7 nephews and nieces, and about half of them do that. Where it's for my older brother, he has 3 kids, and I remember they were the easiest to watch because 8 o'clock came around, and it didn't matter what they were doing. They were just like, they can be standing up, you turn around, they're on the floor sleeping. And I was like, what happened? It was just like the time clock. It was just like, that's it. And I was,
That's some discipline.
yeah,
right there.
I was
That's
just like, what just,
all
right.
You just press the switch.
seriously. At a party one time, like DJ, everything was a family function. And I was like asking my brother, I was like, Robert, where are your kids? And he was like, they're probably sleeping. I was like, where? He's like, I don't know. Find one of the empty tables, look underneath. And sure enough, that's where they were, under the
Oh, that's
table sleeping. And I
adorable.
was like,
That is adorable.
so that's how they are. I have my niece Julia, who's exactly the same. Since she was a baby,
Mhm.
all she did was like sleep and eat. Like she'd wake up, smile, give her bottle, smile, and then go to sleep. And I was like, all right, that was easy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I love the smiling is
The
part of
smile
that.
part, yeah, that was she's like, thank you. I'm gonna go to sleep now.
Okay, I've got this.
So you guys are training yourself for kids, and then all of a sudden you're gonna have those kids that are just gonna be like, all right, cool,
That would be
thanks. I'm
so
gonna go to
funny.
sleep
They'll
now.
be the disciplined ones. We're trying to force a life of acting and
Right.
wild creativity on them. They're like, no, I'd like to actually
I'm
just go
gonna
into
take a
banking.
nap. Yeah, we're good.
I don't want any of this life, that strange life you built for yourselves.
How did you guys come up with We Are Tomas? It was that happened pre. I know you guys were together.
Yeah.
You know, that evolved prior to being together, as you guys were getting together, after you guys were
Yeah,
A, D, C.
Exactly. It's a little bit like, if you can cast your mind back as far as, yeah. There is a strange, okay, so it is a strange line actually, because we met in New York, and then and I was just visiting.
So we're just adding another time zone here now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh dear me, I'll try and keep this straight. Okay, so we met in New York. I was visiting from London, which is where I was living at the time.
Okay.
And Sarah direct messaged me one day on, I think it was on Facebook. And I'm sorry to say, this was the first time I'd ever been direct messaged by anybody. So I was like, what is this magic popping up on my screen and someone just chatting to me?
Wow.
Because I just met her and we'd just become Facebook friends, and she reached out and we started chatting, and then we sort of just wrote backwards and forwards, every day. And I think within a week of that, we actually started coming up with the germs of an idea of something that became a web series that we began to put out earlier this year. So we were creating and writing together from within about a week or 2 weeks of even meeting each other in the first place. And that was all done online. And we were writing backwards and forwards to each other for a good 5 months. And it was
Wow.
just writing. We didn't even get on Skype and chat or something. I think we moved the conversation to Skype, and yet we never got onto Skype and FaceTime.
So it was still typing in
yeah,
Skype?
just typing. And
Okay.
to the point that on Christmas Day that year, we were typing backwards and forwards for about 5 hours or something. And everyone around us is going, do you love each other? And we're like, no.
No.
We're just the kind of friends that write to each other for 5 hours on Christmas Day. What are you talking about? And so we kept on writing backwards and forwards. And then I came over to New York again to do this play that Sarah was both in and co-producing. And it was during that period that we started dating.
Okay.
So we had already started working together in a sense, or creating together in a sense. But then we sort of formalized that a little bit more. And we started writing this web series, and then we filmed this web series, and then Sarah came and lived in London with me for a while. And we turned the web series into a pilot script.
Okay.
And then we thought, well, you know what? Let's go to LA and try out being in LA for a few months. And I was just expecting to go to LA for a few months, then come back to London, pick up my life in London, and she'd pick up her life in New York. And
Right.
you know, we just do it for a bit, and it would be an adventure. But I proposed to Sarah the night that I arrived in America for what was a cross-country trip to LA.
Wow.
And I proposed to her, and that kind of threw everything through a loop, because instead of suddenly being here in order to just pitch a script, we were here trying to figure out how to get married and how to just arrange an entire change of life. And it hadn't even occurred to me that, of course, we wouldn't just be partly in London, partly in New York, because no one lives that glamorous a life, not at our level. And so I ended up accidentally immigrating to America without having forethought at all about it.
Because there's no walls there.
There were no walls there.
You don't have that
see?
issue.
Exactly. So I was in. And so, I found myself living in America, and then so we moved back to the East Coast very quickly, actually, and then we started writing. We started doing a lot of improv. We were on a great improv team in the New York area. We won some competitions, and we had a really good team. We had one of the Gregory brothers from Auto Tune the News.
Okay. Yeah.
He was in our team, and we were good.
Yeah.
We really were. And the funny thing is, just as that was sort of disbanding because everyone was going off and doing their thing, and
Right.
some people were moving cities and things like that, we were starting to. We had some sketches that we had performed with our improv team, Macwood Fleet. That was the name of it. And we had done these sketches at one show. And so Sarah and I thought, well, we'll do this in a New York festival. But then we realized we actually had to write some more sketches and fill out the show. And so we wrote some more sketches, did this show, and that went very well. And then the Pit, which is where it was, gave us a running a monthly show. So that's what really sort of triggered us doing this full-time-ish, because it's weird how much it takes over.
Right.
And so everything we did beforehand sort of stopped, and this is what we were doing, And so I think that's kind of that's the moment at which really you can go, this is when this sketch team began, the first live performance, and from there on, even though we had been working together beforehand. But it is strange, because our relationship grew up simultaneously with the working relationship, but almost ahead of it, if anything.
Okay.
And certainly Sarah barely actually wrote, as in physically wrote. She sort of designed and chatted with me, but I ended up doing most of the writing, the structuring in the early days.
Okay.
And then bit by bit, she realized that she absolutely did not need me whatsoever. And she could structure it just as well as I could. In fact, she could write just as well as I could. And then, oh no, she can do it better. And there you go. And so suddenly, we found ourselves, to start with, doing a lot of collaborating. And then as time gone on, we tend to chat ideas out a little bit, but then one of us will take the wheel and write something, and then the other one will sort of sift over it and make suggestions about extra jokes or things to cut, or it's a bad direction, take it in this direction, or something like that. And so we then start bouncing it backwards and forwards between us.
And I forget the title of it, but there's one that I don't remember if she shared it or if it was shared on the main page, where it showed the evolution of the sketch.
Oh, yes. That's one called The Perfect Woman.
Yes.
Yeah,
The Perfect Woman.
And actually, it's an interesting one as well, because funny enough, that's one of the first sketches, if not the first sketch that we ever filmed, and in fact got us into SAG in the first place, into the union, curiously enough. So we filmed that back in 2011, is when we were first living in LA for the few months that I was just talking about. When we were engaged and trying to figure out how to get married and everything. And during that time, we filmed this particular sketch with a friend here. And we had that, and it actually got us eligible for SAG-AFTRA. And then we, let me think, it was fairly sort of homemade.
Mm-hmm.
It was better than homemade, but it was compared to our current standard a lot more rough and ready.
Right. So you can see the growth.
Yeah, exactly. And then we filmed it again. Oh, I know what it was. It was originally a three-hander sketch, and we filmed it in. That's right. That's right. Then we joined this sort of studio in New York funny enough, Dan Fogler, you know the actor Dan Fogler, he was connected to this particular studio, this guy, Mike Canzanero, running the studio in New York. And they started a sketch comedy wing.
Okay.
And we filmed a few things with them. And one of these things that we filmed was The Perfect Woman, this sketch. But it was a 3-hander. So we filmed it then with 3 of us. And that is out, and that's available to see, is a 3-hander version. And then we tried to film it again in New York, but as a 2-hander version, because by this point we were starting to do live shows, and so we changed it from a 3-hander to a 2-hander, so that we could perform it at our shows.
Okay.
And so we now had a 2-hander version, but we filmed it again in New York, and actually you wouldn't have seen that in the video because we discarded that one completely. We felt like the colors weren't right, the sound wasn't right, it just wasn't right. And there are actually several sketches now, 5 or 6 sketches I think probably, where we have filmed them, but we haven't released them because we're not satisfied.
Okay.
You know, and so one day we plan to re-release them, including one that was involved being cavemen and filming up in the bat caves. You know, the ones where the Batman was.
Going towards the trails, going towards the Hollywood sign, right?
It's somewhere up in the hills. It'll come to me, but it would be one of those things. I'll leave this interview, and then afterwards I'll go. I don't remember where it was. And then someone somewhere is screaming at this. Remember it. This is the name of it. These wonderful caves, beautiful caves where the Batman series, the original Batman series, was filmed.
Right.
And we did a bit of guerrilla filmmaking there, and so much of it looks great, but the sound isn't quite right, and you know some of the shots aren't quite what we want and everything. So we are really picky about what we put out. Anyway, so this is I'm still talking about The Perfect Woman, aren't I? And then we filmed this one in New York and actually scrapped that one completely.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been on the back burner, but it's always been one of our most popular sketches in our live show. And actually we often open the show with it. And it's the sketch in which my character is complaining about how he can't find, you know, a good woman and all that sort of thing, and starts listing all these attributes that he's looking for in this woman. And Sarah, playing the woman who actually has had a crush for this guy and is sort of trying to fulfill all these things, and bit by bit realizing what a complete beep he is. You know, and that she really could do a lot better than this jerk. So it's a slow build on her part from really trying to impress him to being really unimpressed by him. And it's a very satisfying sketch in which Sarah also does an amazing range of sort of physical comedy and everything. Funnily enough, actually, I'll tell you, we created that sketch as well. This is something you won't know about. We created that sketch specifically, originally, as a showcase for Sarah's talents. So the original version of the sketch has all sorts of different accents and physical comedy and singing.
Okay.
And so we thought we'll create this sketch, which on its own would be a way to show that Sarah can do, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, you know, she can do everything.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the nature of writing a good sketch means you end up cutting things down and going, actually, that bit isn't as funny, or that bit's not as good. So, you know, after that initial draft, which was very much everything Sarah can do, we pared it back down again. But it's but that was the origin of it. And so there's a really interesting journey there where we filmed it 4 times.
Wow.
And the latest incarnation is definitely obviously the one that we are.
This is the
we
one
are sticking with.
This is it. This is it.
Yeah.
No, that's great. One of my favorite sketches of yours is I don't know, is it the 7-year itch?
Oh yes.
I love that one.
Yeah. Oh,
We're just like, what are we gonna do? Like, you guys are panicking. Like, we're so in love. This is not right.
That's right. So what that was, we were actually coming up towards our 7th wedding anniversary. We're now past the 7-year itch. We're
congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All that for a green card, huh?
we're into an 8-year itch, and we're into the 9-year itch is coming. And so we did the we were coming up to our 7th wedding anniversary, and so we thought it would be funny to be a couple that were planning a 7-year itch, that they were thinking ahead, and it's like, oh, our 7th anniversary is coming up, so we better start thinking about how to have that itch,
right?
Whatever. That was basically the genesis of the idea, and it morphed from that. It became more about, like, you know, we're in our 7th year of marriage, and we haven't had an itch yet. You know, we still love each other. My friend said the other day we were like newlyweds. It's like, oh my god, this is way worse than I thought it was. You know, and so you've got these two people panicking about how in love they are and how, you know, nothing's gone wrong yet, and it's problematic because there's a sort of timeline, and you have to. It's almost like perfectionism gone wild, where you know what's supposed to happen in a marriage, and it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So it's very counterintuitive, and it's very funny because there's oh gosh, the punchline. I'm not going to say it, but the punchline to that sketch is one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah, no, I love it. That sketch alone is one of my favorites. Like every time you guys show it, I was like, I love that one. And sometimes when because you do that whole watch, Facebook watch.
Yeah.
If sometimes I don't even watch it on that, I just go back to that videos, and
great.
that's honestly my go-to one to watch because it's my favorite one. I think I commented saying that too. Yeah. I love it because my parents have been married now for going on 53 years. They just celebrated their 53 years. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where ironically I'm the opposite. I don't believe in marriage.
Right.
And the reason why, it's not because I don't believe in marriage, it's because of society, how it is today. So that's why I love that sketch so much, because you guys are representing something that's so contradictory of what society is now, where people don't last in their marriage because it's either they got married for convenience, and then they realize I swiped too quickly on that Tinder, and it's kind of like, I don't want to work that hard for this,
Right.
And that's what I love about it, because you point in the sketch, you point out all that, the like, oh, this is supposed to happen, like maybe we should do this, like, that's why it's so clever to me, because it's pointing all that out, and that's why I said your sketches are super relevant.
Oh, that's great. I'm delighted to hear. It's very funny. I love hearing you say all that, and it's really great to get the feedback, because of course one of the things about doing filmmaking in the first place is that you put this stuff out, and I mean, comedy maybe more than most gets that feedback where people comment, or they might write back and so forth. But for the most part, you put it out and there's silence. It's unlike with the live show, you get that immediate feedback of laughter.
Right.
It is strange, and it's lovely to hear what people think and what people make of it. It's also very funny as well, because of course people get whatever they see in it. There's a whole series. One of the first things that went truly viral that we did was this series called Feminist Fairy Tales, and in which Sarah plays this little girl, which she does absolutely magnificently. I cannot recommend it enough to watch them. And she's this little girl who is retelling her favorite fairy tale stories, and as she does so with great enthusiasm and glee and joy, she's pointing out the ways that the sort of misogynistic undertones of every single one of these stories, in which the prince kisses Snow White without her consent, and we all know that women are blah blah blah. I don't want to ruin it for you, but they are a magnificent series of sketches, and it's absolutely phenomenal, because some people were watching those sketches, and most people were probably watching those sketches going, yes, absolutely, these stories are, we love these stories, but they're full of latent misogyny and patriarchal overtones. And then some people would watch them going, these are a brilliant satire of the feminist movement and how feminism deconstructs everything. And so it's phenomenal, because we're the same material will be interpreted completely different ways and it's more revealing about the person who watches them and feeds back on them, which is totally valid. I mean, everybody has their own experience, but it can be surprising what people get out of it.
Like the comments are like, okay.
Yeah, it's like, no, no, it's actually because we passionately believe in promoting a culture that's better for women.
Yeah, and that's what's great about your support, because there's sometimes you have the husband that's just silent and it's just kind of like, go ahead, do what you want to do.
That's right, dear.
Yeah, there you go. But you're actually very involved in what Female Filmmakers Fuse represents, and that's why excuse me, when I sought out to have you guys as a guest, I wanted both of you here, because I watch the sketches, and not only that, I know you can kind of tell who's running what on the social media.
Oh right.
And so I'm like, okay, so this guy's genuine. And then working on the PSA, we worked on the I'm Christine Blasey Ford. Yeah. And you were there, and you were very respectful of all the women that were there. So you were there to provide your support, provide any assistance, but at the same time you're saying, this is about you. I'm gonna be here if you need me. Yeah. And that's what's great about you.
That's very, very kind. I have to say my learning curve has been helped along the way a lot by, again, becoming a broken record here, but because Sarah is very astute, very aware, and also patient enough and insistent enough to make me pay attention and wake up, and then bit by bit go, oh my goodness me, yes, this is a completely lopsided society, and you know, it's not this. We're not living in a society which is some sort of, oh, we're past all that, we're all equal now. You know, there is that baggage, and it is clear once you see it, and it has to be said, I see it only really when it comes down to it, because I've had a very powerful, very impressive woman by my side doing all this emotional labor. And you know, to the point that she actually once sent me a whole article about emotional labor, you know, sent it to me in my, I think, Facebook Messenger or something like that, and kept on at me to read it. And then after about 3 months, really got mad at me because she was having to remind me to read this article about emotional labor. And I think she was so exhausted, she went to sleep, and she woke up to find me reading this article and reading a whole load of other articles she'd sent me, and kind of going, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And, you know, that's like years down the line, all this marriage that's had taken place, and for me to kind of go, oh, God, I get it, or at least I'm beginning to get it, you know. But it is funny because I think the assumption is, I think, that you know, all that stuff is going to be coming from Sarah. And while, without question, you know, it is being driven by Sarah and her insights and her, I mean, if you've seen her talk online and if you've seen her engage in conversation and debates with people, she's mind-blowingly...
I learn a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just like looking at that or like reading some of her comments. I'm like, oh, good point. I didn't even think of that.
It's like she gives you the phrases and the words to talk about something that you didn't even know that was there to talk about or something, you know. She's phenomenal. And also, if you've ever heard one of her interviews, there are no ums and ers, that it's all so crystal clear. You know, she's so well expressed. It's phenomenal, which does mean that in marital arguments she's unfathomably difficult to
so you have that
against.
White flag already, like, okay.
Yeah, she wins basically before we go in. She's so incredibly intelligent. If she had been a lawyer, then you would know about her as like bringing down.
That would have been it.
Yeah, it would be phenomenal.
That would have been it.
Yeah, I've gone on such a sideline about my wife. What was it? It is funny though, because there are sketches that we've written. I mean, there's some of the sketches we've written, which I think you would assume that because they're feminist, they were written by Sarah. There's one which is called Equal Pay, in which a woman comes into an office to talk to the boss and say, I got my paycheck. I think there may be a mistake. I got paid the same as this guy. And he's like, yeah, that's right. And he said, well, you see, I don't have a penis. And so she's sort of arguing why she shouldn't be getting as much, based entirely on the fact that she doesn't have a penis.
Right.
And she doesn't have this testosterone raging around her body that she has to deal with. He deserves more. And it's, I mean, when you put it like that and you put it into the words, you know, phrase it like that and make the argument from that point of view, it's so clearly ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's so utterly ridiculous. And it is funny, but at the same time, you know, it's a very clear statement about the ridiculousness of the concept of not equal pay.
Right.
And that one, I wrote that one. I mean, everything that I write is then, you know, goes through the sieve of Sarah and is sifted and gets her angle and her voice and everything like that. So it's not a one-person job, but it definitely came from me, that one. So it's probably less subtle than some of the ones that she writes. She's probably a more subtle writer than I am. But I think it can be surprising that, you know, we both contribute. I think sometimes people have said to us, for example, because I'm British and she's American, they can hear the British humor, they can hear the American humor, and they go, oh, that's very British humor. But yet she's the one that actually wrote that bit, whereas the bit, oh, that's American humor, that I may have written bit. That, you know, so it's interesting. People definitely see or think they see what they maybe expect to see. Right. Which may be true, may not be true, you know.
I didn't even think about it like that, to be honest. I never put it, because I don't see that sort of humor.
Yeah.
Let me take that back. Let me rephrase that, because I understand where they're coming from, because there is obvious, the humor is obviously different. Not on We Are Tomasi. I don't think so, from my perspective. But I'm saying, like, I understand where they're getting that from, because I love watching Little Britain. You know, that's one of my favorites, you know, and So there's a bunch of different shows that I would watch, and I'm like, okay, this is totally. And some people can't understand it. They're like, I don't get it. This is lame.
Yes.
And I'm like, what?
Yes.
You know, it's just like, what are you talking about? This is smart comedy. That's what I call it.
Oh,
Like,
okay,
what
I
would-
see. Okay,
you
yes,
know,
let's go with that.
so-
Yeah.
you know, that's to me, that's what it is. And so I kind of just see it as smart comedy as a whole with what you guys are doing and what it's representing, and the fact, like I said before earlier on the show, is that you're learning something.
Mhm.
Like, so every sketch that I've seen, there's something there.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, oh, I get, oh.
Well, we have a very popular, I mean, our most viral series has definitely been the Awkward X's History series, where there is actually one sketch that falls outside of this description within that series, but almost all the other ones are Sarah and I playing different countries, and it's literally international relationships. So it's, the main one, the one that's triggered the whole thing, was a Britain and America. Britain turns up at America's birthday party, which is the 4th of July, and he's unexpected, and because they're exes, it's very awkward. So that's where we got the name Awkward Exes from, and it's Britain and America having a whole sort of, you know, they were married, they're not married anymore, this is very difficult. And then we did, the next year we did a 1776 sketch, which was Britain and America, the day that America handed Britain divorce papers, which was the Declaration of Independence. You know? And all those sketches, we've done one since, which was like France on Bastille Day and the Louisiana Purchase. That's France and America. And we've done, actually earlier this year, end of last year, in celebration of the end of the 100th anniversary of World War One, we did a Germany and America one, and we've done Russia and America. And we've actually literally just this last week, we filmed another one, which is Britain and America again, and it's all about the Tea Party.
Okay.
Boston Tea Party, and it's actually them having a tea party.
Oh, nice.
Which is, and it's very satisfying. But the thing about those sketches is that every other word is a pun about some historical thing, and people keep telling us that they've learned so much history from watching our sketches. I'm
saying it's perfect, because this is what we need, especially with things that are going on now.
Well, we've actually had quite a lot of people contacting us to say either that their teacher played this to them in their class, but beeped out the occasional word. Or some teachers have contacted saying, I would love to show this, but is there a version that doesn't have this word in it or something? And the thing is, our material is very PG-13. You know, we do, I think there is a pattern that we do try to make it so that our material can be enjoyed by everybody as much as possible, you know. And I think it's that sense that comedy can be a very inclusive energy, that where everybody can laugh at the same thing, and that kind of makes us come together. And obviously that's not always true, and people have different senses of humor and find different things funny and everything, but we try I think as far as possible to make our stuff accessible, rather than alienating, but it is funny that we put out these things which would be hugely educational were it not for some naughty words. And they're such mild naughty words as well, you know.
But you know, you see cartoons now.
They're much lighter than those cartoons.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't understand
so
it.
much like we're so tame. We're so polite. We're so polite.
But it's true though. I didn't know that. That's amazing. That so they actually show them in.
I was referencing those feminist fairy tales earlier. Sarah's this is, you know, I mean, Sarah's brainchild. She performs them on her own. They're brilliant. I can say that because I've basically nothing to do with them except for I read the script and go, yeah, I'd put a full stop there. You know, period. I'm sorry. And so she, you know, she does these, and more than once, I think 2 or 3 times at this point, universities have actually contacted her to say, can they show them during seminars and classes and things like that, you know, as a teaching tool. Which is phenomenal. We even had a French publisher contact her. I think it was again about feminist fairy tales. I think I might be wrong about that, but I think it was, and asking if they could put it into their teaching materials, so somebody learning English in the French system using their methods in their books could.
That's amazing.
I know, right? We had the year after we did that first big 4th of July sketch I told you about, the following 4th of July, which is when we put out our 1776 sketch, somebody contacted us to tell us that at the massive firework party that was going on in the in the city or the town where they were,
Mhm.
they were projecting films on the backdrop, and one of them was our original 4th of July thing,
What?
which is kind of mind blowing.
That's
Really,
awesome.
I know. It'd be nice if we were getting paid for it, but there
Right.
we go. But maybe one day. Maybe one day.
That's yeah, okay. So they're not getting. I'm trying to focus now because you just threw me off there because
I'm
it's
sorry.
like it's so viral that you would think that are you
Yeah.
getting anything from like Facebook or
Not meaningfully. I mean, we had an interesting situation where halfway through last year, Facebook contacted us, and of course, everyone knows that Facebook is uncontactable.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
you have a complaint, and you go, "This needs to be escalated to the
Yes.
highest levels. Mark Zuckerberg needs to hear this," and you can't even get on the phone to anybody in
Right.
Facebook. So, and then suddenly they contacted us, and they were starting up this 6-month-long scheme, which was essentially to help independent creators. I think what it boils down to is that they keep changing the algorithm, or they did a huge change in the algorithm, which meant that people suddenly weren't being served independently produced content, you
Mhm.
know. And obviously they are trying to get people to pay for advertising, etc.,
Mhm.
etc. So they are sort of moving over towards that place where corporations can throw money at it, and so you see
Right.
lots of corporate
right?
adverts. But the independent producers weren't getting the same airtime. So I think they were doing this, and my hunch is that they were doing this scheme in order to make sure that they try and figure out how to get independently produced content in front of people. And they told us that we were one of their, top independent producers, and so they invited us to do this scheme. And they kind of gave us a stipend for every video we put out, which
Okay.
didn't cover the amount it costs us to make each video, but
Right.
on the other hand, it meant that it cost us less to make each video.
Right.
And part of it was that we would upload a video every single week. So that's when we shifted our output from once every 2 weeks to once every week.
Oh, okay.
And so we were suddenly putting out a new video, comedy sketch video every single
Wow.
week,
More work.
which is more. And actually, it kind of burnt us out. I mean, we've taken a bit of a sort of treading water hiatus this year because so far, although we're getting back in the saddle, but it's because once a week was getting to the place where we're always, because it's basically a 2-person production team. And again, I have to give credit to Sarah. She's the production brains.
Mhm.
I'm sort of the dog's body that will do runs and get this and get that and try and feed everyone on set, But the again, heavily Sarah's brains at work here. But we were always in pre-production, production, post-production, and then also trying to find time to share the actual material itself, and
Right.
try and let people know that it exists.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot of work in that.
yeah, and all the while that's
Yeah.
happening, you're pre-producing the next
Yeah.
round, and giving notes, because we get someone to edit our stuff at least, so that's not done in house, but everything else is,
Right.
Sarah, let's face it, costumes it, and
Yeah,
and
I was gonna
set
say
designs.
the costumes are great.
They look great, aren't they?
Yes.
The production values
Really
are
up there.
really high.
Yes.
We had the 1776 sketch I was telling you about. We had a meeting in Amsterdam
Okay.
with a company, and the guy said to us there, he said, I mean, the production values are great. Like, how much was that? Was that like $10,000? Like, no, it was like $700.
Wow.
To make this very beautiful looking sketch, which was set in 1776.
Wow.
Which in itself was a challenge because, of course, on the West Coast, there's nothing that looks inherently
Right.
like it's
Nothing.
1776. Do you know what I mean?
Nothing.
Because when you think of 1776, you're thinking East Coast, New England,
Yeah.
those kind of buildings, and that just isn't a thing
I-
over here.
I did that. One time I was showing someone around, and they were from, I forget what, but they were from the UK. So they came over, and I was like showing them around. I was like, oh, look at this building. This building's super old. And then after a while, I was like, oh my god.
I
It's just like,
it's
did
so
I just
true.
really do that?
I know. It's
Just
funny
like-
because in LA, if a building's 50 years old, it's like old enough that it should be really torn down and we need to build it again. And it is mind blowing. Although I have to say, when I think of LA, I can't think of another city in the world that has built up so much history in such a short time.
Right.
So although yes, LA is extraordinarily young and so forth, there is an enormous amount of history in one place
Yeah.
for such a short period
Yeah.
of time, and I think that's something that should be very proud of. But yes, It is true.
Don't do that.
Yeah. It was funny. The time that I met Sarah, actually, I was visiting New York, and the night that I landed, so I got back to London, and a friend of mine happened to be putting a play on in some pub theater, and so I went that night, jet lagged, to see this play. And I'd been to this pub theater many times before, but on the way up the stairs that particular time, I noticed on the wall a little plaque that said, Thomas Paine wrote The Rights of Man in this pub. Right? So I'd just come back from the land of the free, the land where the land built on the foundations of Thomas Paine's common sense and the rights of man and all that kind of stuff. And here's the freaking pub in London where he wrote the thing, and I haven't been going to some pub theater, and that was so funny. And I think one of the things I've noticed as well is, for all that being in the UK, yes, we have all this history and everything.
Right.
It's very sobering. If you're going around the UK, you might see the odd sign that points to a historic monument, and it's like a 14th century church. It's like, oh gosh, that's medieval.
Right.
It's magnificent. We should go and see that church. You go to France, and the signs are now saying it's the 4th century, 5th century churches. You know what I mean? And the further south you go, as you get into Italy, you're now looking at 2nd BC.
Yeah. You're like, oh, okay.
2nd century BC. And it's kind of humbling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's that sense that, yes, America obviously is much, much less.
Look at this building. It's been here.
Exactly. It's like, this was here for 15 years. But for all my stories as well, there's more to it than that. I think. And then the further south you go into Greece and then into the Middle East. Okay, this is quite humbling.
Here's Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. I was
like,
pyramids.
Okay.
Those pyramids have been there for a while.
But look, we have the Liberator pits. There you go.
That goes back
there
further.
You go.
There you go. You haven't
there.
Got, yeah, exactly. That's one thing about it. I mean, this country is so spectacularly beautiful. The country, as I said, the human contribution is less.
We're trying to work on that. Just like backpedal.
But it is. I mean, this area of the world is such a beautiful area of the world. I find it, overwhelmingly stunning.
It's ironic hearing that when I have people that I know that are trying to travel out because of how other places are much like they're just beautiful, and I'm like, I'm just still trying to discover where I'm at. I was like, I know there's got to be something pretty cool here. It's like, it's got to be somewhere. It's like, come on, I saw the building that's like 50 years old. It's like, come on.
We should visit. We should visit. We had, I think for Sarah and me, she was originally from Connecticut, but basically to all intents and purposes, New York, and had been living in New York for a good 7 years, and I'd been living in London for a decade. And then when we moved to LA, that was very difficult to start with because it just isn't a city in the same way, you know what I mean? And I think it was only when I realized that it's essentially a massive sprawling suburb, but unlike the suburb where I grew up in the UK, it's a really cool suburb where really awesome stuff happens. And if you know where to go, there are some beautiful buildings, there's some incredible places and everything. And so I think once I connected with that and then just allow myself to enjoy the sunshine, which hasn't happened this year.
No, I don't know what's up with that. This is like a
so
gloomy day.
We'll get onto that. But apart from, in that sense, once we kind of made peace with that, I think we suddenly realized we love this place.
That's cool.
It is a great place to be.
That's cool. We unfortunately have to wrap this up. Let's get you plugging everything in. You have a show coming up this Thursday.
That's right. So this Thursday, 9 p.m. at Second City Hollywood. And then every month at Second City Hollywood, we have a show. And it's about 45, 50 minutes long, but we do about 20 plus sketches. It could be 20, it could be 25. This particular show will be a fun one because we have a friend coming in, Rob Berlin is coming in from New York. Okay. And so we're going to be doing some of our three-hander sketches that we often don't get to do, including our Founding Fathers sketches.
That's awesome.
So that's worth seeing. And then we have nearly 100 videos, I think, now. So you can check those out on
binge on that.
Exactly. Facebook's probably the best place to go to, and it's We Are Tomasi. Tomasi is THOMASSE.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nick, for being our guest today. I hope Sarah feels better.
I'm sure
she will. I'm sure she will too. Let's get over this migraine together. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Again, thank you, Nick. Congratulations, Liz Marshall. and Nick for making that awesome announcement.
Congratulations, Liz.
There you go. Everyone have a safe and happy Sunday.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar and Robin Pabello, only on LA Talk Radio.